while we wait for the other candidates, I'm going to begin by asking Ricardi Anderson, who is our Mason District candidate, to begin by introducing herself for 2 minutes. Also, for the candidates, where is Miss Samia? Oh, she's right here now. So these two young ladies, Munia and Samia, are going to be our timekeepers. So if you see them put up a hand, that means your time has run out. They're right in front of you. So please keep an eye out for them. If you see them put up a hand, that means your time has run out. So please stop. So we'll begin by asking Ricardi Anderson from Mason District to introduce herself.
Good evening. Assalamu alaikum. I'm very happy to be here. I have to say thank you to SAFE and to the Civic Engagement Committee for inviting us yet again. I have started attending, coming to the mosque for various events since early this year, and it's really been a great place for me to come and learn and also to feel a part of a community. I love all of the wonderful things that are going on here. I'm a parent. I have 2 children who are in Mason District schools, and that has been my compelling reasons to want to engage in what's going on in Mason District, because I want them to be afforded every opportunity just like every other student around Fairfax. Most importantly to me, I think what helps me to help with that vision is my background. I have been a teacher and a principal for 23 years. I've had the opportunity to lead 2 elementary schools and a middle school, with my last 2 schools being in a neighboring district, where I've had the chance to really learn and grow and to participate in the work of the school board. That's been my work for 23 years. And so now I'll have the opportunity to really address some of the issues that I have had as a teacher, the issues that I have had as a principal, the issues that I have as a parent. And also, I'm an immigrant. My family and I, we emigrated from Haiti when I was a youngster in elementary school. And so I understand many of the issues that many of our parents in Mason District face, because my family faced that as well. I know from an inside point of view what it's like and how difficult sometimes it is to navigate a new culture, a new school system, to not necessarily feel heard. So I want to be that voice, not just because of my background, but also because of my experience. I would love to be able to take all of what I have learned and honed in the past 23 years and bring that to Mason District. So on November 5th, I ask for your vote. I'm Ricardi Anderson. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person that we're going to ask to begin with an introduction is Ms. Cheryl Buford. Cheryl is running for school board at large, and this is the mic that you're going, sorry, there's a lot of mics up here, but this is the mic that you're going to be using.
Thank you very much. It's such an honor to be here with you tonight. I too am a person of faith, and our faith shares many things in common: devotion to God, commitment to our families and to hard work, and also dedication to serving our neighbors, including and especially those who are less fortunate. My work with Fairfax County Public Schools began nearly 20 years ago when my children were very young. We were new to the county, and I got very involved as a parent volunteer and was involved all the way through. But they've graduated, but my work isn't finished because I have an extensive background in education and public policy, and I want to use it to serve our county and the children of Fairfax and the families of Fairfax County. I was a teacher for 10 years. I taught career technical education. I earned a master's in public policy and worked at the Department of Education on programs to help at-risk youth. I also have been a consultant to nonprofit organizations, including a religious freedom organization. It was the only multi-faith, multi-sector religious freedom organization committed to education and providing accommodation in the public square. And I am the granddaughter of Eastern European immigrants. So I understand the value of education and changing a family's future. My name is Cheryl Buford, and I ask for your vote on November 5th.
Thank you. Again, we're going to ask that everyone hold their applause until the end of the forum, and that way we get to hear everybody, and then we can applaud for all at the end. I'm going to ask Ms. Karen Keys-Gamara, who is a current member for running for at-large school board.
Salam. Good evening. My name is Karen Keys-Gamara, and it has been my pleasure to serve as one of your at-large school board members since 2017. For those of you who don't know me, I've been living in Fairfax County since 1990, and I am the mother of 3 boys, all of whom have attended Fairfax County Public Schools. I was very involved because as a woman of color, I wondered whether that would impact their access to education. And so I'm pleased to say that while we may have had some bumps along the road, I was able to go to my son's graduation from West Point this past May, and we dropped off my youngest son at William and Mary, and yes, I'm still recovering from that. I'm also an attorney, and I represent children in difficult situations like abuse and neglect, detention, all the way through to adoption. And irrespective of what a child has experienced, and I know that children can have different experiences, I understand that if we give children an appropriate access to education, we also give them the keys to success. And so I joined the board 2 years ago with that perspective, and I got to work right away because I wanted to make sure that my community understood that I was there because I believe in the power of one. I believe that one person can make a difference for his or her community. And I know I heard your leaders speak to you just a few days ago about that very thing. And so I have sought to make a difference for communities where they may not have had access to education or there may be barriers. So I've worked to increase access to advanced academics, to reform our discipline procedures to make sure that we are no longer having the types of disparities where we see more children of color or special education kids involved in our discipline. Thank you so much. I look forward to talking about the other things that I've worked on. My name is Karen Keys-Gamara, and I very much would appreciate your support.
Thank you. I want to mention that one of the at-large candidates it will not make it tonight, Priscilla DiStefano, because she had a work commitment that she had, and we're still waiting for Vincent Palathingal, who said that he was running a little bit late. And in the meantime, we will continue with the introductions. I would like to ask Rachna Sizemore to speak and then introduce yourselves. Thanks.
Salam. My name is Rachna Sizemore-Heiser, and I'm running for school board at large, so which means I'm running county-wide. And for those of you who don't know, you can vote for 3 for your school board at large, and you can vote for 1 in your district. So when you vote, you can vote for 4 school board members. I am running as a parent. My son is a junior in high school right now. My daughter graduated from Fairfax County 2 years ago. My children started in school here. They spent their entire educational careers here. And I have spent over a decade advocating as a parent advocate for children who especially need those voices, for children in the discipline system, children with special needs. And I bring to you an institutional knowledge of knowing where our schools have been, where the holes still are, and where we still need to go. I started my career as a lawyer. I started in corporate law, doing mergers and acquisitions, multi-million-dollar mergers and acquisitions, so I understand how to manage a $3 billion budget and how to do the finances of our school. I went on from there to be a college professor, and that is what I do now. I started at George Mason. I taught constitutional law and criminal law, and now I teach human resources through an online program at Texas Tech, and I teach employment law, diversity and cultural competency, and I bring up my legal background for a couple reasons. One, I want to, as a college professor, I know the skills our children need to be successful in our schools, and those are the skills I want to bring into our schools: critical thinking, reasoning, communication, teamwork, along with strong academics. I want a well-rounded education. As an attorney, and a human resources professional, I understand how to create a positive working environment for our teachers so we retain and recruit the best teachers. And as a child of immigrants myself, who was raised in a minority religion that was not well understood, with a name that is different than the names I heard growing up in school, I understand what it means to come from a heritage I'm proud of, but also try to bridge two cultures. And I want to bring that understanding to our schools, because the thing that I want the most is to create an inclusive and welcoming environment where every child is seen for what they can do, not what they can't do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Vincent Xavier Palathingal to introduce himself for 2 minutes. And you've got a mic right next to that mic. There you go. Yes, speak into it.
Thank you, Saif. Really appreciate this. I'm sorry I came late. I was actually having 4 campaign events today, so I'm running from one of the events. My name is again Vincent Xavier Palathingal. I'm from Kerala in India, one of the first places where Christianity came right after Jesus Christ, and Islam came right after Muhammad, Prophet Muhammad. So I know what religious, harmony is. I was brought up in India. I came to United States to do my master's degree in engineering. I have raised 2 boys through the Fairfax County public school system. So what I was experiencing in that 6 years that they were a part in the system, that's what encouraged me to run for school board, to make sure that some of the things that I see here that is going after the families or parents' rights in their children's lives, to make sure that whatever the parents believe, whatever they want their children to become, that's what should be the future of a child, not a school system or a government teaching a child what it should be. So I am running with the parental rights, family values, and I know that as a community that is based in faith, you can all relate to what I believe in, and I'm very passionate about this. I really wanted to fix whatever wrongs that are happening in Fairfax County to make it more family-friendly place where traditionally family values are not being discounted. When you talk about family life education, I mean real family life education. So I'm running on those values, academic rigor, fiscal responsibility by the school board, and parental rights. So I'm counting on your support. Again, vincentforschoolboard.com. Is that 2 minutes?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
So Vincent, you weren't here. So Ms. Samia here and Ms. Munya are timekeepers. So if you see them raise their hand, that means that your time has concluded.
Thank you.
And last,
thank you very much.
Certainly not least, she has home field advantage, I guess, being from this community, Ms. Abrar Umesh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. It's obviously a pleasure to be with everyone here tonight. I'm Abrar Umesh. I've grown up in this masjid, of course. I've gone through our public school system growing up in Fairfax County, and it was precisely my time in school, seeing the challenges my friends went through, my peers, the obstacles that were in their way, that incentivized me and really motivated me to make that difference in our community and to take a step forward to address some of those injustices. To me, equity is critically important. When we're proud of a county, Fairfax County, where anyone can be successful, I want to make sure that that's the case on all levels. And what place than better than our schools to start with that? Whether it's discipline and making sure that students are handled and taught properly. Whether it's academics and making sure that students of particular racial groups don't fall behind. Making sure that we have fairness and equality here, that resources are distributed in a way and programs are offered such that every child can access it regardless of where they live. And you all know that too well, being from this community and particularly in Falls Church and Annandale. When I identified some of these challenges when I was in school, I ended up starting an organization that's been providing free tutoring and mentorship to kids. We've been serving thousands of families for the past 10 years in 20 locations. And I've also been serving on various school board committees. I served on 4 in the past and currently am the co-chair of the Human Resources Advisory Committee for the school board. I've been advocating on a number of issues, and for those of you who are part of the Girl Scout troop that I attended, going to meetings right here in our lecture hall. For my Gold Award project, I actually ended up amending some of the language around bullying in our Student Rights and Responsibilities booklet. So in any case, I've been really involved in education. I want to look forward to providing supports, in addition to equity, mental health supports for students who struggle. Because when we think about our children, we're not just educating them, right? When we send them to school and they're spending so many hours away from you guys, it's not just about preparing them academically, but ensuring that we educate them holistically so that we care for their social and emotional needs, that we provide those mental health supports, and that we're raising them to be citizens and contributing members of our community who feel proud of their identities and who feel a sense of belonging. I'm excited to also be running alongside Ricardi, Rachna, and Karen, who also believe in these values. And I know that's time, but I look forward to continuing to answer your questions and being accessible to you first and foremost. It's extremely important to me to be a voice for everybody.
Thank you. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to ask a question, and there'll be 3 questions. We've told the candidates generally what the questions will be about, and then we'll open the floor to the audience. And typically what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with Ricardi for the question because it is Mason. She is the Mason district candidate. Unfortunately, her opponent is not here tonight, but we will start with Ricardi because of the Mason district component, and then we will go and alternate between the at-large candidates in answering the questions. So the first question is, it revolves around faith-based accommodation in school. Kareem isn't here. Where is Kareem? He just left. Okay. So for example, Justice High School has allowed for a prayer room or an area for the Muslim students to pray while they were at school. And recently that room has been shrunk to a closet where it used to be that the students could pray there comfortably, and now they are literally in a closet to pray. What would you do to make sure that students of all faiths receive what they need to be able to practice their faith while at school? That's the first part of the question. The second part of the question has to do with the school calendar. We have fought hard to include the Eid holidays on the calendar as well as the Jewish high holidays, and it has been included on the calendar. Unfortunately, there is not an even practice across the Fairfax County school system for how they are treated. So for example, we had a situation at Edison High School last year, or last school year, where there were final exams on Eid days. So students who were seniors had to make a decision of whether they would attend their religious holiday or not graduate. What would you do to make sure that whatever policy the school board sets in terms of faith-based accommodation is practiced across county schools? Ricardi.
Thank you so much. First of all, it is our responsibility to be respectful of all of the faiths. It is our responsibility to ensure that everyone who walks into our schools are comfortable and are respected. In respect to the space that was made available to Justice, from being a principal at multiple schools, when you have a school that is growing exponentially, sometimes it's really difficult for you to find different spaces to do the things that you need to do. But we have to be a little bit more creative than this, than relegating folks to a closet. And it has happened. It has happened not just for the religious purposes. It has happened where we have classrooms, or rather teachers' lounges have been turned into classrooms because there's been no space. So I think we really have to get a little bit more creative in providing a space that makes sense for our kids to be able to worship and to be respected and to have some dignity around having that opportunity. So I would definitely want to have that conversation with the team with the administrative team at Justice to see what accommodations that we need to make, because that closet just will not be acceptable, because it tells us that it's not something that is important to us. The message that is sending is not one that I think we want to say in our community. The school calendar. And again, as a school principal, this is something that I've had to address many times. Ad nauseum, I've had to share with teachers that when we have students who are fasting, for example, let us not give the assessments at the end of the day. Let us not give the assessments during times where they're not at their best. Maybe the assessments are early in the morning, maybe they're the day before. It is not going to be difficult for us as a school community, as a board, to create a task force and to create some policies around this so that it could be adhered to throughout throughout Fairfax County. The unevenness of how accommodations are being levied, that is not something that is acceptable, and that is not fair to our students. So having a policy that we can make sure that all of our schools are adhering to will be something that I would like to work on.
Thank you. I'm going to move to Cheryl. Same question. Questions?
Thank you. Yeah, it's hard to follow Riccardi because, of course, I agree that we need to provide space for students of all faiths to be able to practice their faith, whether it is a prayer room or accommodation during holidays. And I have heard students tell me that even PE during times of Ramadan when they are fasting is difficult, and sometimes their physical education teachers are accommodating and don't make them run, which would be difficult when they're fasting, and which I was glad to hear, but yes, there needs to be policies around that as well. And I think that something that you didn't mention in terms of religious accommodation would be issues of modesty. And I have to tell you that when an online Democratic publication put out that I was homophobic because I worked for a religious freedom organization, I found that very offensive, and that might be something that you would want to know about too, because I know that modesty and is very important to the Muslim community.
Thank you. I'm going to switch over to Rachna.
Thank you very much, and I agree with much with what Riccardi said, that as someone who taught constitutional law, I know that our schools as public need to make sure they neither promote nor inhibit religion. And what that means is we must make sure we reasonably accommodate people's need for religion. My own son was sent out of his school and was given inadequate classroom spaces because of his disability. So I feel this very, very strongly, that we must provide adequate spaces for our students to pray, we must provide adequate room for them to do it, and we must make sure that we are not penalizing students for their religious beliefs and their religious holidays. So in terms of prayer rooms, yes, not only do we need to make sure we have them, but they should be appropriate spaces for our students. For the calendar, I heard two questions. One was about policy and one was about consistent implementation of that policy. So I'm going to address the policy part first. We do need to have policy at the school board level that addresses both not having important school events on holidays. I was also raised in a religion that was not the majority religion, so I had my own personal holidays that were school days, and so I've experienced this as a child. So first thing we need to do is have consistent policy across our school system that recognizes that there are certain students from who religious holidays are not the same days that our school gives off. We also need to recognize in terms of fasting and other religious rituals that we need to make sure we do not have tests, to your point, at the end of the day, PE, and even important things like senior picnics, which I've heard have been scheduled during Eid and things like that, that, you know, every student should be given a full chance to be part of their community, and they can't do that if they have to make a choice between important religious holidays and participating in these community building events. As far as implementation of that policy, what I really like to see is our assistant superintendents. We have 5 regions with assistant superintendents, and my understanding is the idea is those levels are supposed to take our big school system and make it into smaller school systems to be more consistent in our implementation. I like to make sure that level is doing the oversight they need to do, and that's the job of the school board to oversee, to make sure that the implementation is consistent as well as the policy is strong.
Thank you. Vincent.
So I was brought up in a Catholic school. So we had a chapel nearby the school, and all the time, whenever we want to pray, we had an opportunity to do that. And I'm a person running with, religion and moral character and spirituality as a platform. I really like when people are religious. So there is definitely, there has to be accommodation. If people have to become more religious, it is definitely good for the society. The only thing if there is a discrimination against one religion against the other, that is where I see the problems that can arise. So if we can have like a common place in a school that is good for everybody to pray whenever it is up for them to pray, I'm all supportive of that. I really wanted to bring more God and more religion into people's lives, which is going to be helpful. And when it comes to calendar, again, the bottom line is I come from Kerala. Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Jews, we had everybody. So if all of those days are going to become holidays, then it's going to be a problem. But at the same time, a final test happening on one of the religions' holiday, it never happens in our place when I was growing up. Good Friday was a holiday for us when I was growing up. I'm a Catholic, so it was good. And when we come here, we say, oh my God, Good Friday is not a holiday in America. We thought it's a Christian country. But anyway, so we cannot advocate for more holidays, but always religion is good for children. So we have to make sure that we promote children who wanted to celebrate those holidays by having an understanding that we are not going to have any major tests on that day. That is common sense, and I'm really all for it.
Thank you. So I want to clarify that at Al-Hijrah Islamic Center, along with a lot of the Jewish synagogues, came to the agreement that it was not in our interest right now to call for holiday, but that the Muslim students and the Jewish students should have not to choose between tests and other major activities on high holiday days. For Muslims, obviously, it's the 2 Eids. For the Jewish students, they're the Jewish high holiday days. And that hasn't been implemented.
Yep, absolutely. I'm all supportive of having accommodations.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Abrar.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for the question, first of all. It's critical for us to think about these topics and make sure we hold our leadership accountable. I obviously grew up as one of those kids, so these are very personal things to me. When it comes to the holiday, there's no question that accommodation is necessary. I remember just this past spring hearing from families that were complaining. I know Oakton, for example, graduation, that was a big thing for this community. It was sent around in WhatsApp groups, and the outrage was there, ensuring that things like that don't happen. In terms of prayer spaces, I was that kid, had to go to the library in the closet of the video room where the hallway wasn't even wide enough for me to face the Qibla. So I absolutely understand that challenge. I also want to see for every school building that we have, because it's not only students, it's also staff, a designated space. And it doesn't have to necessarily be a separate room, but it should be a space where folks can go. It doesn't even have to only be for Muslim students. The idea is, spiritual recentering or meditation or whatever it is for anyone, mental health even, just to get a short break, that be provided, and that we have a very clear designation of where that is in each building in Fairfax County, all 190 buildings that we have. And then, in addition, there are other accommodations too, right? When we think about food, whether that's labeling food, making sure we have halal options, and that's a potential partnership with the Jewish community as well for halal and kosher. Ensuring that staff who have to work in the cafeteria are not required to work with pork. I've heard that complaint from families right here in Al-Hijrah, women who don't work in the cafeteria because they don't want to handle pork. So making sure that those accommodations are there, and that's put in policy so that it is standardized. Because the other thing I've heard from families is that it's inconsistent. Sometimes in certain schools, principals are very accommodating of things, and in other schools, they just don't understand it. And so, you know, when accommodation-wise, Jum'ah is another concern for the Muslim community. I know I actually just spoke this past Friday with a teacher at Glasgow about this, seeing if teachers can potentially take that last block off and that be kind of a no-ask policy where if a teacher requests that, it doesn't have to be interrogated and justified, but that teachers can take that last block off if they want to go to Jum'ah, and then for students, of course, trying to ensure that that space is provided and that, you know, families are accommodated if they want to be able to especially take their young sons.
So just for clarification, Jumu'ah is Friday prayers, Friday being the sermon day for Muslims. Ms. Karen Keys-Gamarra.
Thank you. As a woman who was raised in the church and taught the importance of prayer, I certainly understand the importance of being able to exercise one's religious beliefs irrespective of where you are. As a school board, we've had some discussions about this, and the calendar, believe it or not, is one of the most contentious discussions we can have because there are so many competing interests. Having said that, this board has made it very clear, and we are also working on something that I think is at the core of this issue, and that is cultural proficiency. To make sure that our staff members understand that we are to accommodate the needs of our children. This is in line with every other thing that we do because we try to serve every child by name and by need. And so certainly we don't want children to have to pray in closets. We don't want children to have to learn in closets. I visited Justice just about a month ago and I saw where they had moved a classroom into something not much bigger than a closet. However, this is where I would depend on my community because I happen to know that or believe that the folks at Justice would like to accommodate their students. I also understand that they have challenges. And so I would want to know as a board member that this is happening so that we can address this concern. With respect to, I think you had a second part of that, which was
making sure that the policy is adopted uniformly across the school system.
Yes. So we do have regional superintendents in every region, and we are working on the issue of fidelity. But again, I do believe the issue of accommodations has been set by the board where we have made it clear that we expect these accommodations to be made, but we also have to depend on some reporting because sometimes we just don't know that it's not being followed.
Thank you. I'm going to ask if we have any Justice High School students here because I know we had some of them that had a complaint. Ala, okay. So we had a forum recently. And some of the Justice High School students were talking about some of the policies being implemented in the high school, such as the tardy, there's some tardy raids or something that happened at the high school. And they were saying that even if they were at the door of the classroom, the doors would lock, and they would essentially have to go back to the office to get a tardy slip, and it would be counted on their record after 3 times or whatnot. I want to pivot from that question to a larger question, and it has to do with parent involvement in schooling for their children. One of the issues that our community has been facing is we have to get involved with parents after a problem happens. Instead of the schools getting the parents involved proactively, what would you do to make sure that parents are involved proactively before a problem occurs so that we don't have to deal with policies after they've already been implemented? And we'll start this time with Ricardi again, and then we'll go over to Vincent.
Okay, thank you. Well, this is kind of like my bailiwick. This is what I've done in all of my work. As a principal who's had many assistant principals who have trained, who've gone on to be their own principals at their own schools, one of the things that I always share with them, if we have a student who comes into the office for whatever reason, whether they were the ones who were a victim of some situation or they were the ones that were witness to a situation, If we have a kid that is losing instructional time, it is imperative that we call the parents before that child gets on the bus, because we need to make sure that that parent has the full understanding of what is happening. I share this story because I want to stress how important communication is when it comes to involving our parents from a school site. I've said this time and time again, the school, it's kind of a tripod. It's the school, it's the child, it's the parents. It doesn't work if we take one out of the equation. It will topple. So for me, ensuring that we have not just the policies, because I think we have them, but really helping our staff understand and build those expectations and to buy into having that communication, to really understand that that communication will pay off dividends. Because if you spend 15 minutes on the phone with a parent really hashing out the issues that are going on, rather than that child going home and letting the parent know what happened, and the parent should rightfully be very incensed that they were not part of that conversation in terms of what impacted their child in the day. And I've heard this throughout this journey time and time again, and Julie will tell you, it just hurts my heart in terms of why is it that sometimes I find that our administrators, our schools are making it so much harder on themselves than they need to be. Just open up the lines of communication. When you have something going on like the tardy raid, you know, I've worked in a school, I've done 8,000 versions of these things, but it's always been done with the communication going out to parents ahead of time so that we could head it off at the pass. Something happened in Annandale this year, similar issue, where no one told the parents what was going on. That would have been an easy conversation. Involve folks, newsletters, parent forums, PTAs. It is not hard to make that happen. And I'd like to think, if I have the opportunity to be on the board and to speak to the school leadership, that I can speak to them from a colleague's point of view, because I've had the opportunity to be that person in that school. It pays dividends when we are involving the parents. And for me, it's a non-negotiable. It has to happen, because I wouldn't want that for my personal children to have anything happen to them and I have to learn it from them. I've gone way over time.
All right, thank you. I'm going to go next to Vincent.
I apologize.
We're giving you the first answer because you're the only Mason candidate, so don't go over time. I'm going to stop you quicker.
Thank you.
Vincent.
Okay, when it comes to parental involvement, I believe when we have more and more immigrant families, like I can share from my experience, when I go to Haycock Elementary School first time, they were asking for a volunteer to run the hands-on science program in one of the PTA meetings. And they say we need somebody with some science technology background, and I am sitting there, an engineer, but still don't want to raise my hand, thinking that, oh my God, these kids are not going to understand my accent. But I go to the next meeting, and again she's asking, if nobody volunteer, we're going to terminate this program, we cannot continue this. And finally, I raise my hand like this, slowly, you know, and I committed for 1 year. I did the program very well. So it gave me a lot of confidence. Okay, these people can understand my accent. It's not a big deal. So I really want parents to be involved. And when we come from different countries, that is not truly the case. We are not used to that parental involvement. So we need people like me who went through that experience, who represent immigrants. Like 50% of the Fairfax County children come from immigrant homes. So we need an immigrant father on that school board who will understand how we can get these immigrant communities get involved in the schools, which is very important. And when it comes to that timeliness, I just wanted to comment on that, the tardy slip. You know, when we come to a foreign country, definitely, I mean, there are a lot of different customs, and the timeliness of America was the biggest challenge that I had. Because I know you all have heard about the Indian Standard Time. You know, I didn't come late because of Indian Standard Time, okay, I was really campaigning. But what I'm saying is, sometimes it's good to have that punctuality. So when you're cut off at that exact minute, that's when kids are going to learn that. You know, I have become myself much more punctual after coming to America. So it is not a bad thing altogether. So I'm all supportive of cutting at that time, and then so they go to the principal's office and getting that permission. But at the same time, when it comes to parental involvement, I want more and more of parental involvement in the schools, and I will be the agent for that.
Thank you. Karen.
Thank you. I'll stand up. It's nice to stretch anyway. I started out by saying I represent children, which means I do a lot of work within the communities, and the number one thing that we need to create success when I run into difficulty is parental involvement. And so I take that same approach in working with the school board. We've also taken that approach with respect to the reforms that we did to our discipline policies. We actually require that when a child is being disciplined, that the school notify the parents even before talking to the child. And so that principle is being implemented in our schools more and more, and I have advocated for that. So what I'm trying to say is, if we want our kids to be successful, we have to be intentional about involving parents. And we are emphasizing through our training of our staff that this focus has to be intentional. We're encouraging our staff members to reach out to families from day one when school starts. We want to establish a method of communication. And I want our staff members to have an open door policy with our community so that you know how to reach them and you feel comfortable in doing so. I would also like to improve how we communicate with our families. We can use that, what's W-H-A, yeah, that. We can use that in text and try to make sure that we're using the communication that our parents and our students are using. So with respect to the tardy policy, again, I do depend on our community to let me know when problems arise. I had not heard of that, but I certainly would be concerned about how that is impacting a child, right? And so that would cause me to have a discussion with the principal and try to come up with something that I believe might be more reasonable.
So before we continue, just a quick clarification. The problem with the tardy sweep wasn't the tardy sweep itself, but that the kids coming into the classroom were getting jammed at the door coming in, and that as soon as the bell rang, that door would shut. And then even if you were at the door, you were considered tardy, and that was the complaint. It was just that the kids were all trying to get in at the same time, and even if you were at the door, you'd still have to go back and get a permission slip.
That's lack of common sense, yeah.
So we'll go to Cheryl.
Well, parental involvement is a very high priority to me as well. If you pick up one of my palm cards, you can see it's the first bullet that I as a school board member, have as my first bullet that listening, learning, leading. So I, as a school board member, would want to have an open door policy and open communication with the Muslim community, with the diversity of communities in the county. So that's for starters. I heard about a school in the western part of the county where the teachers actually go out and visit the children in their homes before the first day of school to welcome them to school. And it has now become a ritual that the families look forward to. So practices like that then establish the relationships long before there's any problems. So it builds trust, it builds face-to-face communication, and I would encourage schools, more schools, to do things like that. I do have to say that having been a teacher, I know that there are many, many demands on teachers' time, and so kind of creating the environment that makes it easier for teachers to reach out to families and spend time with students. We've got to cut back on some of the top-down initiatives, look for ways to streamline meetings, and some of those procedural policies so teachers are more available to families.
Thank you. Abrar?
Yeah, this is obviously a critical topic, and I started by discussing equity and ensuring that there's fairness and whatnot. And this is a key issue when we think about parent involvement, whether parents are able to be there for their kids or not, whether some parents work 2, 3 jobs and can't be there for their kids. So I want to look at the model of success that we've set up for students and see how we can actually minimize that role in ensuring students are successful whether they have that or not. That's first and foremost. Because there are many barriers and obstacles, of course. Which brings me to my next point, which is I want to see a lower ratio of student to social worker or student to parent liaison in all of our schools. We don't meet best practices right now when it comes to those numbers, and they're critical members of our community who build trust, and maybe some of you know the parent liaisons of your own school, and who can really bridge that gap for a lot of families. The other point I want to make is, you know, proactively engaging families looks a little bit different, I would argue, than what we've seen so far. So as a school board member, I would want to see, rather than expecting you to come to the school board meeting, to know how to, first of all, find the sign-up form, to sign up, to come speak, instead of that being the only way I hear from you, I want to come out to the community. I don't think organizing and reaching out to the community ends with a campaign. So, you know, say we have an information night. Rather than hosting that in a building that parents have to come out of their way to come to, maybe we host that in community buildings that are already within our neighborhoods so that families have ease of access in that sense. And finally, I want to expand constituent services in general. You know, the school board, it's a massive job. It's actually unreasonable to expect one school board member to do the job of serving 1.2 million families. And it's probably, I mean, the only local office that doesn't have, other than soil and water, but the only paid local office that doesn't have staff and in a deliberate office. And if we're to be serious about this, we would put our money where our mouth is, and we would have folks who are able to support, you know, so as school board members, we can direct based on what we hear from the community, but we also have folks who are spending their time tending to families' needs. So when there are complaints, whether it's the tardy policy, whether it's Oakton having Eid, graduation on Eid, there's a way to properly respond and engage families and ensure that information is passed on accurately.
Rachna.
Thank you very much for this question. I really appreciate it. As a parent advocate, I've spent over a decade advocating in our schools, and one of the things I've realized with my own children's education is that we are what I call a squeaky wheel system. If you have a squeaky wheel parent, you get a great education in Fairfax County, and if you don't, sometimes our kids fail and get lost. And so it's really important to me that we provide avenues for our parents to be proactively involved. I want a parent to be involved and engaged with the teacher and the education before that student ever gets to the principal's office. And there's a couple things that I think we really need to do. First of all, we need to do a better job of reaching out proactively to our communities to help them understand how and why we should get involved. My parents came from a different country, and while they were both very well educated, they didn't come from a culture that was involved in our schools. It wasn't part of their culture. So I think reaching out to our culture to say, this is what a PTA is, this is what we do, we want you, we welcome you, please come, I think that is really important. I would love to see in our back to school night, those packets that get mailed to all of our families before school starts, information about the value and benefits of parental involvement and multiple paths to get involved. I would like to see our teachers have proactive outreach to our families. I would like to, as Abrar talked about, having outreach from the school board members, but I think it has to come from the schools as well as the school board members. I really think we need to do a better job of going to the communities and communicating in the way that you are, whether it's WhatsApp or in the community, to say, here's how you get involved, here's why you get involved, and here's how you can proactively get involved, and here's how we welcome you into our schools. That's the first thing. The second thing I'd like to do is to increase the number of parent liaisons we have. That's a great role that we have already in our schools, to reach out to our communities, to be that liaison, that bridge to help our parents understand how to resolve issues in our schools. We could use more parent liaisons in our schools. But really, studies show that engaged parents are the key to success for our students. So this is really important, to make sure that our parents who want to be engaged are engaged, and the parents who don't know how to be engaged are provided information for that, and our teachers build collaborative relationships with our families.
Thank you very much. It's almost 10 o'clock. I appreciate everybody still being here and still being awake. So I'm going to open up the floor for question and answers from the audience. And what we're going to do is we'll ask all the candidates to limit your answers to 30 seconds so that we can get very quick answers, and then we will start closing up once we get a couple of questions in so that we can hear from people. Yes, Munia, we will start with you.
I'm very concerned about what's going on in our community,
So please stand up and speak up. No, go ahead and speak up.
Yeah, so you guys are talking about the parent liaison and the role of the parent liaison in our community, especially for people who does not speak any English. So we have a big problem that I experienced myself with my coworker, where she does not speak any English, and her son was marked always tardy, that he has over 50 absence. And whenever I called the school, actually he was inside the class. But somehow, just because he was not acting, you know, in a good way in the beginning of the year, which is he's trying to be better, they labeled him as a bad kid, where he's always absent. So basically, we have only one parent liaison, Sister Nafisa, who was doing a great job. Like
Nafisa, can you stand up for a second?
Yes.
I want the community to know
Yeah.
this is the parent liaison.
Yeah, mashallah. So,
and she hasn't. You're at Justice.
So basically, that's my question. Yeah.
Glasgow. Okay.
So basically, she was the only communication that we had in Justice, and now it's gone. So I was wondering what my coworker is gonna do to communicate with. Is she gonna be quiet, and her son's gonna be absent for the whole year while he's going to school? I mean, Sister Nafisa is doing a good job. We hear that from all the parents, and now I'm questioning the principal. How can she make a rule that the question, how can we like discipline our principals and our assistant principals of making like decisions like this, where the community actually, we need Sister Nafisa and Justice, and now we don't have any parent liaison.
So let me rephrase it. I think what you're saying is, and I'm going to change the battery of this while I'm doing that. What you're saying is how can we activate or give more authorities or some sort of venues for parent liaisons to be involved proactively in the school systems, because what's happening is some parent liaisons are being sidelined, essentially, is what you're saying.
We are the parents, we need her in the school, so you don't have her anymore.
Okay. So she didn't leave. She was asked not to be in Justice, but then Justice still calls her whenever they have an Arab issue with some of the Arab parents. So she's at Glasgow. She's moved. She's moved, yes, but she was asked to move. I don't want to make this into a personal issue. Let's talk about this, but let's talk about parent liaisons, and we will start. What do you think we can do?
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Parent liaisons are a critical component. When we're talking about needs-based services, needs-based resources, it is one of the critical things in our area. We have greater needs in Mason District, so we need to make sure we have greater resources. Lower ratio of parent liaisons, because we know that they're interfacing with so many more families than in some other places. Lower class sizes, particularly for our students who are learning English. Lower ratios of counselors, because they cannot handle some of their administrative duties.
We'll go to Cheryl. We'll go to Cheryl next. That was quick 30 seconds. I know. I want to get you guys home.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, we definitely need parent liaisons. I would also, depending on the budgetary restraints for parent liaisons, I would like to engage mosque and community organizations to tap an individual to serve as parent liaisons, for you to identify a parent liaison within your community that the school could call on as well.
Thank you. Rachna.
This is really important. I heard two questions. One, the value of parent liaisons, which is very, very valuable for those families who don't know how to advocate or don't have the avenues or ability to advocate. But I also heard about holding principals and administrators accountable for understanding that. And I think that comes to a lack of cultural competency in some of our principals and understanding the diverse communities they serve and understanding the real value in having parent liaisons to help those families. I also think one of my biggest issues for years of advocacy has been the inconsistencies across the county in understanding and implementation. And I think that inconsistency comes from the fact that our principals have a lot of power over their schools. And I think we need better oversight, again, from the regional superintendent level and the school board level, so there's an understanding of the best practice of educating a child, which is family engagement through these parent liaisons. So I really think we need to do a better oversight and training and cultural competency training of our administrators to understand these roles.
Thank you. Vincent.
I think the first thing that we have to do is to remove the emphasis on language, and somebody has to proactively advocate that. We are in a multi-linguistic community. People speak all different languages. So if you are so focused on being perfect in English, that's where a lot of people shy away from this kind of responsibilities. So the emphasis has to change. And how can you change that? Having a school board member who has English as a second language, and that's me. So I will be the advocate for such situations where people are struggling with language and you don't feel shy about it. Come on forward. You are welcome.
Thank you.
That message is the most important thing.
Thank you. Karen.
I think the value of parent liaisons goes without saying. The need to understand the need for languages goes without saying. But I think part of that question was, what can we do? We're about to go into budget season, and we have lots of people come out and stand in lines and bombard school board members and say, I want this. And I encourage this community to be the squeaky wheel that we can hear. I encourage you to contact your school board members. I encourage you to come to our meetings and tell us what you need so it can become a budget line item.
Thank you. Abrar.
3 quick things. Number 1, I want to look into how our administrators are promoted. I know that oftentimes they might be teachers and whatnot, and we've seen, whether it's studies or reports from folks in the schools, that there may be promotion of certain individuals over others, and that there may be some biases involved with that, and there's limited accountability. So I want to look into that and ensure that we have diverse workforces that enable better treatment. Second, I want to reevaluate our funding model and lobby. Okay, one of the 3, but
we'll stop there. Another question, Abdul Razak. Abdul Razak, actually, let me take a student question in the back. Yes. Sorry. Go ahead. Thank you. So the question is that we are getting 7 hours of homework, and we're only supposed to get 30 minutes of homework.
Is it 7, 8 hours a night?
How many hours a night? 6 to 7 hours of homework. What will you do? What will you do to make sure that students aren't sitting at home doing homework and going to school afterwards and not having a life other than that?
This is an issue that I am familiar with. I think a lot of it often comes up to the school lacking communication within the teachers, because especially in high school, you have the math teacher, the English teacher, the science teacher, and there's not that cross-communication to really balance out what we're expecting a child to do. So ensuring that we have a model in schools that allows for the staff to have greater communication, they will have a better sense of the load that they're adding onto the children. When we're taking a look at the PLC model, for example, that some schools use.
Yeah, we'll stop right there. We're going to go Abrar this time, and then I'm going to jump back to Cheryl.
Number 1, I want to continue empowering the student voice so that we hear these concerns, and that's been critically important to me and has been something my campaign has been working hard to do. Finally, I think, teaching smart is different than teaching students to just, spend hours of time doing homework, and I was one of those kids staying up on average to 2 a.m. every day in high school. But yeah, so if we allow students to take initiative in the way they learn, it's really about rethinking that whole way of doing it, as opposed to just drilling to the test, as we've been talking about, or forcing kids to meet certain standards, letting them lead their own education.
Vincent.
Now, I would like to hear more about her specific situation. Maybe you're taking too many AP classes or something. Which grade you're in? 9th? Anyway, that's too much homework. There has to be a balance. There has to be enough time for kids to sleep. So we have to really understand what exactly is going on.
Thank you. Rachna.
Well, that's unacceptable. And having a daughter who would spend a lot of time on homework herself, best practices show that there is a lot of diminishing returns on homework. There's a need for students to have well-rounded experiences, and having that much homework takes away from. So a couple things. One, what Ricardi said, the teachers not talking to each other. Two, making sure that we have policies that get pushed down to the schools about our administrators and our teachers understanding what's reasonable and what's not, and really re-looking at how are we educating our students to see if homework is actually valuable or not, and rethinking our educational system.
Thank you. Cheryl.
Well, I'm surprised to hear that the amount of homework. My daughter went to TJ, and she had a academically demanding, very rigorous program, but I don't ever remember her having to spend 6 to 7 hours, so that is very troubling. I think that, you know, we need to survey students and find out how prevalent your situation is, because yes, that is unacceptable, and principals need to take leadership in coordinating, in helping their teachers coordinate.
Thank you. Karen.
So thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't hear your name, but I'm sorry? Nebula. Thank you so much. I actually hear about this problem quite a bit, and we do have a homework policy. It is not supposed to be more than 2 hours. Having said that, trying to get folks to adhere to that seems to be extremely difficult. And I think it has to do with us changing the culture of how we think about learning. And so we're trying to work on that. I'm very concerned about the mental health of our students. A lack of sleep can contribute to difficulty. So I want a community discussion on this issue.
Thank you. I'm going to take one last question. I'm going to ask Abdul Razak to go ahead and ask your question, and then we'll go to closing remarks from all the candidates. So the question is, the schools in this area happen to have very low ratings versus schools in other areas. I personally live in Providence District, who have very high ratings. What would you do to ensure that all schools improve their ratings, particularly Mason District schools? Justice is one of the worst schools rated in Fairfax County.
This is more than just a 30-second answer.
We'll give you a minute.
Okay, thank you.
So character in schools. I know what you want to get to, but we have to get the answers. But let's get to the ratings.
In terms of the ratings, these ratings that are determined by great schools, it's based on a very narrow set of criteria. It's how did kids perform on the state assessments. Historically, some of our students don't do as well, particularly our students in Mason District. It's not because they're unable folks. It's because many of them are still learning English. It's because many of them have a lot of other obstacles that prevent them from doing well on the assessments. My personal children go to a school that is a 6, and I could not be happier, because I know the school is doing all of the right things. They are differentiating instruction for them. They're challenging them. They're meeting them where they are. Because the school is 60 to almost 70% free and reduced lunch, 60 to 70% EL students, there are some challenges that don't test well. And those scores, it's just about the test. I implore you, please go find out about those schools. Go speak with people. Do not let the ratings be the driver of your decision. And it is for so many parents. I work in Loudoun County. I have had countless parents come to register their kids and just casual conversation. Hey, where are you coming in from? Oh, Annandale. I live in Annandale. Tell me why. Oh, I want better schools for my children. The schools here are good, but we have different challenges that are not necessarily elsewhere. But please unpeel the onion. Those scores are not the end-all to be-all.
Thank you. I'll start with Abrar this time.
Thank you for the question. In addition to that important point, that's exactly why I started with the equity conversation. I want to make sure we see advanced academic centers even in these schools. And I know that the school board has started that, and I want to continue to see that, because that's how we elevate the level broadly. I also want to see funding by need rather than by enrollment, and that's how it happens right now. So when we're able to fund by need, we're able to provide the supports that will allow students in these communities that tend to be from more often free and reduced meals, lower income families, a lot of immigrants, as Ricardo mentioned, a lot of challenges. So when we fund by need, we're able to provide the support so that to ensure that those test scores and students are able to achieve at equal levels as their peers elsewhere in the county. And finally, continuing the community partnerships, as I mentioned, where we have more parent liaisons and social workers that are able to work with families, because parents are that key part in this to ensure that those test scores are at the levels we need and that those metrics reflect better on these schools. But again, ensuring that fairness when it comes to resource distribution is going to be critical, and it's precisely what I care most about.
Cheryl.
Okay, the barriers to language is definitely a problem that brings test scores down and then creates a impression that schools aren't doing well. But I think there is a more fundamental approach that we need to take. We really need to disaggregate what is going on in terms of curriculum and classroom management. We need to look for models of success. And many times in schools where there's a high proportion of families on free and reduced lunch, yes, the test scores are low. But there are models. We are moving the needle here in Fairfax County. We need to look at models of success and wherever we can find them.
Thank you. Karen.
I'm sorry, it's getting late. I'm going to ask you to repeat the question.
The question is, the school ratings here in Mason District are very low. Mm-hmm. What would you do to increase school ratings, particularly in Mason District or in districts that typically have lower ratings versus the other districts of Fairfax County?
Well, I am actually very concerned about great schools in particular and those types of rating services because they actually are steering buyers of homes, and I think that it can be discriminatory. Let me start out with that. But having said that, the school board is, and I have advocated for equity, particularly in every one of our districts. I am the Title I liaison, which is a funding program for schools that have a higher ratio of poverty. And we do provide additional supports. I want to say a little bit about Justice High School. Justice High School is one of the schools, the other one is Lee High School, that has the highest number of students coming into that school with interrupted education. And unfortunately, when those folks take a test, it drives down the scores of Justice High School. But if we separated out the students that are kind of passing through or just came into our schools, Justice High School's testing would be a lot higher. And so we're now talking to the state to try to be able to break that out so it would be a better representation of how our students are doing. I could brag about Justice High School. We've got some amazing things happening there.
Vincent.
Definitely the ratings cannot be wrong just because of zip codes. That is common sense. So the ratings are low because there is definitely some other root cause. So we have to really go to the root cause of the problem. The affluent sections of the county, from what I have seen, employ a lot of tutoring, a lot of enrichment programs to their children. That really elevates their test-taking ability and test scores. That really puts them at a higher pedestal when it comes to test results. So we have to really understand that, to prove that statistically this is what is causing the trouble. And of course, coming from immigrants, coming from foreign countries where English is not their first language, definitely contributes to the parents having lack of awareness of what's going on. So I think these are the two issues that are really the root causes of the problem. So we have to attack the problem at the root cause. So we cannot send children from these areas for tutoring and we cannot spend the money on it. But once we understand what exactly is the problem, we can incorporate some of the ways of teaching into our public school system so all kids can benefit. You know, like the academic rigor that we are talking about, the drill-based mathematics learning, the phonics-based English learning. If we can bring it to county system, all kids can benefit instead of just the affluent kids now.
Thank you. Rachna.
So the first thing I would say, I agree with Riccardi. I chose a school that did not have the highest ratings because I knew that school focused on whole education and not just teaching to the test. As a college professor, I can tell you what your kids need to be successful in college is not drilling and teaching to the test. It is critical thinking, it is reasoning, and the schools that don't focus on just the ratings actually teach that better. So I just want to encourage you guys to not just look at the ratings, which are based just on test scores. Having said that, there are schools that have greater challenges, whether it's students with more free and reduced price meals or students that are more English learners. We have a great program in Fairfax County called Project Momentum that is there to bring extra resources and education to those schools to help those schools close those gaps. I think we need to continue programs where we give needs-based resources and funding to those schools to help those schools close the gaps. We need more community school models where we have wraparound services at our schools, mental health supports, community food supports, whatever we need so our children are able to access learning at the best possibility. And then we need enrichment and high academic programs in all of our schools, even for our English language learners, which often don't have access to honors programs, because I believe that children rise to what you give them.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to go to closing remarks. And I'm going to ask you to limit them to a minute because we are very late, and the mics actually turn off at 10:30. So we got to beat the 10:30, yes. I had to actually text the executive director to extend it. They go off at 10:15, so I extended them to 10:30. But Riccardi, please kick
We'll
us off.
definitely get you there. Again, my name is Riccardi Anderson, and I'm asking for your support on November 5th because my heart is to ensure that all of our kids are able to progress, all of our kids are able to thrive. This is what I've done as a teacher. This is what I've done as a principal. And more importantly, it is what we owe our children. It really doesn't matter whether English is their second language. It doesn't matter whether they have a disability. It doesn't matter whether they're poor. None of those things are the things that matter. Yes, can they offer challenges? Certainly. It is our job as instructors, is it our job as school board members to remove those obstacles so that they too can thrive. How are we going to do this? One, we have to have the expectation that all of our kids can. And two, we have to not save the best strategies for some kids. In my lifetime, I have seen that the most compelling teaching strategies are being utilized only with some students. If we offer that to all of our students, I promise you they will rise to the occasion. How do I know this? Because I have seen this in my work. It is not a drill and kill. It is an opportunity to ask all kids to think critically. We can move the needle on this if we have the expectation that they all can.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Cheryl to go next.
Again, thank you for the opportunity to be with you tonight. I am fighting for your sons and daughters' future. If I am elected, I will safeguard neighborhood schools. I will promote academic rigor across the board. We don't need to lower the standards. We need to support our students so that they grow and are able to meet the standards. Did you know that 50% of our graduates who go on to attend Northern Virginia Community College have to take remedial writing? Yes, critical thinking is important, but they've got to have basic gateway skills like reading, writing, and mathematics in order to flourish. I want to promote multiple pathways to a good paying job. 75% of our students start college, but less than 45% of them graduate in 6 years. I want to promote ROTC programs. Oh, can I finish my sentence?
Sure.
Internships and career technical education. The military was my father's pathway out of poverty. I ask for your vote on November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachna.
Thank you. So thank you very much, everybody, for taking your time in your evening to listen to us. My name is Rachna Sizemore-Heiser, and I'm here to bring you the breadth of skills and experience as a Berkeley-educated lawyer, a parent with a child in our school right now to see what's happening on the ground, a college professor, and a longtime advocate. I started because my children had their own issues, but when my children had issues, I didn't just fix it for them. I went to Richmond and I got a diploma option put in place for tens of thousands of students to access college. I helped revise IEP forms. I've been on community boards. I did all this because I stand before you as a woman who was very lucky in my education, very lucky in my parents, and I have been the voice for my children. But now I am here to be the voice for all of the children and families who need it. Because if I am lucky enough to have the skills and opportunities I've had, I want to bring those to help those who need those skills for their own families. I want to see a well-rounded education. I want strong schools in every community. And I want an inclusive, respectful environment where every child is seen for their strengths and every child is given a path to success. Thank you.
I'm going to ask Karen, and then we'll go to Vincent.
Thank you for this opportunity. I am so grateful to be able to have been welcomed into your community time and time again and to have been able to eat some of your amazing food again and again. Anytime.
And all of you are welcome, by the way, anytime.
Thank you. I'm a mom, and I have kids that look like me. And I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to wonder, A, are they going to be safe? Are they going to be respected? And are they going to have access to education? I'm also an attorney. And I get the privilege of stepping in the place of kids in a number of situations from diverse backgrounds to try to make sure that they have a fair shot at education and at life. Because I do believe in the power of one. And I do believe in fighting for every single kid, no matter what background they have or what language they speak. And I can tell you that with that attitude, with that opportunity, I see children succeeding, and I'd like to continue to fight. Karen Keys-Gamarra, Karen the number 4, fairfaxkids.com. Thank you so much.
Vincent.
I was the 5th child.
Vincent,
5th of the 6.
A little bit away.
Huh?
Yeah, there you go. Go ahead.
Okay. I was the 5th of 6 children my parents had. My father was a pious, religious person. So this is what I have heard from my eldest brother to me and my younger sister. He was always telling, if wealth is lost, nothing is lost. If health is lost, something is lost. If character is lost, everything is lost. So, and I was brought up by him, and he's still my role model. He passed away, some time ago. So I really believe that our society having less and less number of role models, role model parents, role model fathers in today's world. And in name of the father that I respect a lot, I want to be a role model figure for the children growing up in Fairfax County. Striving for values in their life, and education providing an environment that will be helpful for nurturing those values and character formation. This is very important. And faith-based communities is what I am counting on to be the source for such strength to this public education system. So I am personally requesting all of you to have an open mind.
Thank you.
To check out all the candidates and my website, vincentforschoolboard.com.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And last but certainly not least, Abrar Amish.
Okay, so we talked about a lot of issues tonight. Holistic education, equity and fairness, mental health support for students. But really what drives me the most, and what's more important to me than the technicalities of the conversation, is the fact that I want us all to believe in the potential of every child, to believe in that leader in every child, that person, that young child who can, as a kindergartner, we can see that maybe they'll be the person to cure cancer. Maybe that will be the next, president of the United States. That we believe in every child's ability to become successful, and by sincerely believing in that, we can then care about facilitating those resources and ensuring that equal access is out there in the county. You know, this masjid, wallahi, it's the diversity in this community. The Somali mother who yells at me for not standing on the line, and the uncle, you know, the Moroccan uncle who I might not be able to communicate Arabic well too much because of our different dialect. This community is what showed me diversity. It showed me what community can look like from all across the world. And this is that's what inspires me to believe in a Fairfax County where everybody, regardless of their background, regardless of what home looks like for them, whether they came to this country yesterday or whether they came a year ago, can be successful. And so I ask you to think about that and to believe in this vision and to make sure that we come out and we vote on November 5th, because it's going to be important to hear your voice.
Thank you very much. Can we get a round of applause for all the candidates? And although thank you very much, and give yourselves a round of applause for waiting this long and staying up this late. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all the candidates that came out. We really appreciate. We want to make sure to tell everyone that the mosque is open. You are welcome to come on any Friday prayers. You're welcome to come during any of our activities. Just give me a call and we can accommodate that. And if you come on Friday, you do get a lunch, as Karen came on Friday, so she got a lunch heading out. And if you'd like to, you want to take a picture? Yeah, we can do a picture. Sure, that's a good idea. So Munya says, let's take a group.